right, great. So thanks everybody for attending today. Good afternoon. Most of you know me, some of you will, this may be your first time getting to know me, but it's a pleasure and I'm really, really thankful and excited that you guys were able to attend today's session. With this webinar today, we're going to be covering software validations with ProCal. Obviously, ProCal is what we're familiar with. If you're attending this, it's probably what you're interested in as well, but it's going to span across all types of software validations as well. So you're going to be able to see stuff like why customers perform a validation, a high level overview of a standard, GAMP5 level validation project, as well as how you can get started or reach out to have us support you today. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Again, I know a lot of you guys here know me or have spoken with me before. I see a few names that are new to me on the list, so it's worth the introduction. My name is Robert Goss. I'm an account manager here at Prime Technologies. That being said, I am a certified ProCal subject matter expert, work in the software every single day. A lot. I have a lot of time and hours into the ProCal product. I've been a Prime Technologies employee for over 6 years now. And with that being said, I've worked with customers in all different types of industries. Being in the account management role, I get to understand the problems with discovery early up front and work with the customers in order to find solutions to those pain points and problems. That being said, I'm going to be able to take a lot of that information, translate it into this presentation and provide you guys with that today. But luckily, I'm not the most knowledgeable here, and that's where I'll let my colleague Rob Efford introduce himself.
Yes, good afternoon all. My name is Rob Efford, as Robert said. My current title is the Product and Customer Support Manager. I've also held many different roles, including Quality Manager here at Prime Technologies. I've done a lot of software validations with customers. I am certified ProCal V5 subject matter expert, and I've been with the company for 18 years. So I have quite a lot to offer.
Yeah, on top of that, Rob has also run metrology labs in the past, but most notably, he's worked in a lot of software validation projects. And I'm just really excited to have him on this conversation as a resource because I'm not sure who else may know more about software validation than Rob here. Cool. So diving a little deeper into this, what are we going to cover today? What's the agenda? Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about what software validation is, get into the various types of validation that are performed that we see in the industry, which industries are required to perform software validations, not just those who require it though, but some of those who opt in to do it sometimes. If you're in a regulated industry, this may be shocking to you, but some people who aren't required to do validations will perform either a full validation or a minor UAT as part of that. After that, we're going to talk about what the standard GAMP5 level validation process looks like start to finish. Mainly, we're going to focus on GAMP5 because it's the most popular, though aside from that, we're going to be talking about a few of the additional benefits that you're can expect to see from a validation, aside from just the regulatory compliance. Then we'll get into the benefits of working with a software vendor for the validation versus just performing it solely and entirely internally with your own quality teams. There's definitely pros and cons to both, and we'll break that down a little bit and hopefully start the conversation. So the first portion of this, the slide deck, it's going to run about 20 minutes. That's what we can probably expect here from that. Afterwards, we're going to be diving into the Q&A. This is a very dense and thorough topic, so I'm expecting there will be quite a few questions that are posed throughout this conversation. You should have a Q&A button either on the top or the bottom of your screen that you can utilize to ask questions, again, at any point during this conversation. If we say one thing, you need some clarification, or you'd like us to dive into it deeper, just shoot us a question. We'll get to it towards the end of the presentation. If there are any questions that we cannot answer or don't have the time to answer or anything like that, we will follow up with you guys afterwards with a specified email, just kind of filling you in, making sure that your questions are all heard and nothing goes unanswered. So with that, I thought it would just be really important and helpful to kick this off with a quick definition of what we're going to be talking about today. So there's different types of validation. It's a really common word, but specifically we're going to be talking about software validation today. And best way I could do it is to get the FDA's description of what a software validation is, which they have defined as, let me go to the next slide. There we go. The confirmation by examination and provision of objective evidence that software specifications conform to user needs and intended uses, and that the requirements can be implemented, or requirements implemented through software can be consistently fulfilled. Basically, what that means is a software validation is a series of tests that you perform on the application to ensure that it is considered a reliable source of information to make impactful decisions upon, and it's going to be functioning exactly as expected. So it's just a way to ensure that what you guys are going to be looking for, what you need to utilize the product for, it will meet all of those needs in a reliable and safe manner that you can count on every single time. So, pretty self-explanatory, but very important to define that at the beginning. Now that we know what validation is and how we're going to be discussing it today, why do people validate? What are the benefits that you'll find from a software validation? First of all, most importantly, most obvious is regulatory compliance. If you're in an environment that requires software validation through the FDA, perhaps, and an auditor comes in and you have a non-validated system, it's immediately going to be a huge problem. How do you know that this information is, accurate, your devices are accurate, you're making product, all this other stuff. So regulatory compliance is first and foremost the most obvious and the biggest reason that we see customers validate. Furthermore, there are a couple of other benefits that you will receive from this, such as system reliability, the system's going to function as expected, reduced overall cost of maintaining quality, pretty obvious. And then something else that I found interesting, and I've heard from a few sources, is a faster scaling from the pilot to a manufacturing level. Sometimes in pilot levels where you're not necessarily creating product, you may not be required to have a full validation complete, but getting it done as early on as possible helps to refine the processes. And then as you scale upwards, that's just one less thing that you're going to have to worry about. Plus, it just helps to ensure that the technicians and the product is being used in the very specific manner that for which it was intended. There's a couple of other benefits and stuff here that I thought were worth bringing up that we found through customers and other searches and stuff. It helps to optimize processes, assure the quality of your products, obviously, increases the output, and then it also just reduces complaints, rejections, batch failures, mix-ups, and cross-contamination. It just helps to ensure that you have a healthy and productive manufacturing process, start to finish. So as we talk about the software validation and validation in general, there are a few different types of validation, 4 primarily, and then one more I added onto here for, as a talking point. But this is really what we see from our point on a day-to-day basis when we're working with our regulated customers. There's 5 levels here. First of all, GAMP5 validation, or GAMP is good automated manufacturing practice, similar to good manufacturing practice. But this is where you'll leverage the vendor's documentation. It's a risk-based approach, and it's just the most common that we see, probably 9 out of 10, if not 99 out of 100. Maybe not that high, but it's a very, very high percentage will lead with a GAMP5 level validation when they're implementing a new system. And that's because typically in this type of scenario, a vendor such as Prime Technologies here, we fully pre-validate the system to the GAMP4 level, which we'll talk about in a second, for every major and minor release. And that being said, we have all of the documentation, the system requirement specifications, the validation summary reports, even in a lot of cases, just like the validation protocols that you'll be able to kind of tailor down for your own specialized workflows. We've done all of the heavy lifting up front, and as long as you can, audit us via an on-site audit or a postal audit, as long as you accept us, you take consider us a low-risk vendor. It's a risk-based approach, but it is the most common that we see, and it just really streamlines the entire validation, process. Getting into a little more, a couple of these other options here. A GAMP4 level validation. This is really just fully validating the entire software system. It's much more intensive, not always required. We do occasionally see customers perform this, but this is really just, sometimes this needs to be performed if the vendor has not validated the system themselves and they have no documentation for you to leverage. But in our case, this is what we'll do initially, where even if they aren't our specified workflows that we're going to be following, it's everything that the system's capable of. You will perform the PQs on those. You'll go through the entire process just to understand the system as a whole, what it is capable of. It can function in those manners. Again, this is much more intensive and usually not going to be required for customers. Moving on, there's a couple of other things here. UATs, or user acceptance testing. This is a much lighter validation approach. This is frequently the route that we see for those who are not regulated by the FDA. We'll get it. I don't want to spoil the rest of the conversation, but there are a few select industries that will just do a simple UAT, or user acceptance testing, to ensure that their workflows will be satisfied via the system. But yeah, again, this is just a much lighter approach, and we see these for those just in the not so heavily regulated spaces. Moving on, there's a validation addendum. This is more, I thought it was worth bringing up, but this is if you're going to be upgrading a system. Say, for example, you're moving from ProCal version 5.7 to 5.8. You are moving to a new system. There's new functionality. It's a new database, but the core competency of the system remains the same. So what this is basically you'll have to go in there and just make changes, or perform new PQs specifically on the updated workflows or the changes to the system that you will be utilizing. When you're going and you're upgrading to a new version, there is still a degree of validation that is typically required by your quality department, but it's just going to be much lower intensity, and you're just going to be validating the specific workflows or changes to your workflows that are accompany that upgraded version. And then the last part on here too is just an asset validation. This isn't something we're going to be talking about today. It's just, I hear it very, very frequently, at least weekly, people talking about this. This comes up. So I just wanted to specify this is not, really what our conversation is going to be about today, but it's just, again, another frequent usage of the term for validation in the regulated industry, where your equipment, your hardware also needs to be validated before being put into production use. So we talked about what a validation is in the context of our conversation, some of the different types of validation we're going to be discussing today. But then, here leading up to this part, what industries require validation? So a lot of this is going to be self-explanatory. You'll see, life sciences, pharmaceuticals, medical device manufacturing, just anything in those really heavily FDA regulated industries. They're going to require a software validation most of the time, especially if you are going to be putting product out to customers, or you're delivering an end product. It's sometimes in R&D labs, for example, or something like that. It's not as required, or not required immediately, but then when you scale up, it will be required. But these three industries right here, if you're in one of these industries, you can be pretty certain that you're going to have to validate your system. Moving on, there's a few more that are kind of up in the air. We see customers do it, one way or the other. But probably aside from these three, industries, where else we see validations frequently performed are for FDA regulated service companies, or service companies in general. This is really going to be dependent on your client, dependent on you guys. I say probably 50-50. We'll see customers that service or service companies that service those in the FDA regulated space, like a drug manufacturer. About 50% of the time, they'll go and perform a full GAMP 5 level validation. Sometimes just having the a pre-validated system, making sure that it's 21 CFR 11 compliant, making sure it checks all the other boxes, is good enough for the customer, good enough for the process and everything. But again, we do see service companies validate their system and perform at least a GAMP 5 level validation occasionally, but that's usually going to be dependent on whether or not your customers require that. Getting a little bit deeper, you'll see these other two here. These are where we see the UATs frequently performed: nuclear power, nuclear testing, military, specific government entities, items like that. That's where there isn't a specific GAMP 5 level guide on how this needs to be performed, but we will see the UATs and user acceptance testing performed just to ensure that they have that system reliability before they put this into a production use, especially in nuclear, for example. That's, it's a very high risk environment, and they want to ensure that everything that they're utilizing there is meeting all of their needs. So we do frequently at least see those higher level ones and assist customers with those higher level UATs in those industries as well. And I'm sure there's plenty of others too. So if you're not seeing your industry here, but you know that you do require a validation, I'm more than excited to learn about that. So this is where we're going to kind of dive a little deeper into what an actual validation workflow looks like. This is a full implementation workflow, just a generalized one. But this is actually where I'm going to let Rob Efford talk a little bit more about this, because he knows it better than anyone.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So, and this is just like a boilerplate type of a workflow here, but it starts with a pre-project where This is before you've even decided on a software. You'll get your requirements, justification for needing a CMS, and then vendor funding and all that stuff. Next, it goes into the project planning, where we will get a project plan together. You'll get the key players involved, find out who needs to sign off on certain things, get the scope of the project, and get those administration people involved also. Then we get into the design. We're going to create a development environment. We're going to have to set up the configuration, which is going to include mapping user groups with access levels and employees. If there's going to be a data migration plan, that'll be also included in this design, and plans for the deployment, get some timelines in there. Next, we get into the implementation of it. Once we've done the configuration, we might find that there's a need for some custom reports, some custom test type packages for the product there. And again, if there's a data migration, let's get that program getting risked out there. Next, we go to the validation part of it, and this is where we get to the risk assessment. This is, at this point here, we're going to decide at what level you may wish to do your testing, and that risk assessment is going to define your installation qualification, your operational qualification, your performance qualification. Sometimes these will be combined to an OPQ, an operation performance qualification. Then we get to the deployment. If there's a data migration, we'll go through the execution of that. We'll help with the user training. Then we go live. If there was a migration, then there usually is a plan to retire the legacy system, so that that's all wrapped up into that plan there also.
Great, thanks, Rob. And yeah, like again, this is really high level. A lot of what we've been discussing will, take place in that validate section, and that's that box there around the IQ, OQ, and most importantly the PQ. It's something we're more than happy to dive deeper into with anybody if they have questions specifically about tailoring scripts, PQ, script execution, anything like that. We're trying to keep this high level. We don't want to spend 45 minutes diving into the dense topics here and everything too. But if there are additional questions on that, or you want to dive into a more detailed discussion, just shoot a question over or let us know, and we can schedule up another call to dive deeper into what our standard, actual practices and the workflows look like on a day-to-day basis. We can have a long conversation about that. So as I promised, there's another section here. Just what an internal validation looks like versus leveraging the vendor. So this is something, I've seen these both ways over the 6 years that I've been here. Typically, we see a lot more customers do leverage us for a number of other reasons too. But again, you can have a successful project no matter which approach you're taking. Starting with the internal validation there, that's where you'll see, that's where your team will provide the VSR, will provide the validation protocols, will provide all the documentation, but then you're going to be leveraging your internal resources, your expertise, your quality, and you're going to be performing this, your team and yourselves. So, there's a lot of degree we can help out with questions and everything like this, but in this approach, you're taking the lead and you're tackling the project and you're handling it with your own internal resources. Like I said too, there's the general protocols, that we can send over for you to tailor down to your specific workflows. There's a lot of other documentation that you'd be able to leverage. It's all going to be there. And again, we're going to do everything we can to enable the success of the project, no matter which approach you take here. Even with the internal validation, we're just a phone call away. So if there are questions you have, you need assistance, anything like that, we are, again, no matter what, we want to ensure the success of the project and the successful use of the program. So we're going to be willing to help you guys out, with anything. And then just an average project length for this. This is something where we've seen, I've seen it all over 6 to 12 months. There's actually a case for a specific customer that leveraged a third party for this, and it ended up taking them about 18 months. But that was a little bit of an outlier project. But yeah, I think that 6 to 12 months is a good example of what we typically see when the customer tackles the project on their own. And this is primarily because it's not their only job. There are, they have other responsibilities. This is more of a specific side project while you're taking on other things. But that's probably around what you could expect here. When we're looking at the prime assisted validation, when we, can step in, and again, there's several layers of support that we can provide here. You're going to be getting an expert team with years of experience leading the project. And this is really, you'll have someone like Rob Efford for 18 years has been doing these software validations. He knows ProCal in and out. And it's just a lot of, we've done it before. We know the specific things to workflow, look for, and the specific ins and outs of the workflow. So, there's just some obvious benefits to having someone who knows this like the back of their hand, helping out with it. Regardless of their approach, you're going to get all the validation documentation, so you won't be left out there. But really, I think the big thing here is you're going to be getting a dedicated resource who, not just someone part-time, but a dedicated resource who can lead the project or just follow your direction as a service consultant or service resource or anything like that too. So, but this is where, this is why we can see an average validation project that we're taking a lead in and we're having an active part on. They usually last about 3 to 5 months in just the total calendar timeline. Get started in March. You can usually expect to be done by August in those types of things too. So, and that's really, again, just because we know we've done these all the time. We know just immediately how the workflow should go, what the project should look like. And I guess with that, the prime assisted validation, it's not just going to be, you get us and that's it. There's tons of different levels of support that we can provide, whether it's just high level, consultation, configuration assistance with the system and getting all the documentation order, down to even, actually performing tailoring the scripts for your team to execute and do that final PQ execution. In some outlier cases, we've done the entire validation as well, from consultation and configuration down to full script execution. But we typically don't like to take this approach. As you can imagine, it can frequently be seen as a conflict of interest if we're validating our own work and everything too. But it's just something that we have been tasked with and asked to do for customers who have been in tight time crunches. We've even gotten these projects done in a much quicker pace than 3 to 5 months when time has been of the essence. But I don't want to sign my team up for anything and have them yelling at me later. So I'm going to stick with the 3 to 5 months as a good average there. But that's, again, they have their pros and cons. Both approaches, obviously it's quicker and everything, but that may not be, it may not be as high of a priority to get this implemented immediately. And you may want to take some of your own time and spend time with the configuration and the PQ and everything as an opportunity to learn more about the software. So there's definitely pros and cons to both approach. We're more than happy to just give you a transparent and realistic view on how either of these look. I'm more than happy to assist with any of that. So how can we support you on getting this started, learning more about this, answering any of your questions? Really, our team, we're always available to assist. All you have to do is just let us know that you're interested in learning more. Whether it's just writing in the chat, writing in the questions here, letting us know that way, and someone will reach out to you to get that conversation started, shooting us an email, going into our website, and I'll have my contact information up in a slide or two with our website. But literally just all you need to do is let us know that you're interested in the conversation. We can take care of the rest of it, getting in touch, setting up a meeting, anything at all. It's just up to you guys to let us know that you need to learn more, and we can walk through the entire project, just answer a simple question, propose the services, anything at all. And like I said, we're happy to provide any level of assistance, whether it is just that high level consultation to kind of check back on your work or review your project plan, all the way down to that PQ script execution. Anything from the high end or the low end, we're more than happy to assist with. And you don't even have to know what you need us to assist with at the beginning, and we can work through that with you as well. So again, just don't hesitate to reach out. We're more than happy just to have that quick discovery call with you and just fill you in on any additional information that you may need to learn. So as we're going here, and I apologize, I think I am running behind schedule with this. So I want to dive into the Q&A. I do see we have a handful of questions that have come in already. So I'm going to pull up the contact information so that everybody has that and pull these questions over in front of me. But yeah, so you'll have all the, you have our contact information here if you need to reach out to us. With that, I'll start answering some of these questions. And if you guys have any additional questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out. Just type them in the Q&A box. It can be anonymous. It can be, you can put your name on there and have us follow up with you specifically afterwards. It's up to you guys, but we'll go ahead and get started with answering some of these. And this is actually a good one. I'm going to let you answer this one, Rob. The first question is, what GAMP category is ProCal?
Okay, so ProCal is a GAMP, it is a category 4, which it's a configurable software that is a commercial off-the-shelf software. So we don't make one-off ProCals for customers. There have been some companies in the past that have done that, which also makes it very hard to regulate. So if somebody pays us for an enhancement, everybody gets that enhancement in the next version. So that puts us in the category 4 level of that there.
Great. Yeah, that's I think I sometimes hear that COTS 4 classified like that, and that's a really good point. Just to reemphasize what Rob said, we are a configurable commercial off-the-shelf application. That being said, we're not making custom builds for people. If we add new functionality to the software, it's just there in the background with the ability to turn it on. But we really just do this so that when there are new version upgrades, new releases, we only have to upgrade one version and we can turn those around in a timely manner, opposed to having to perform an update on 80 different versions at the same time and then do a full pre-valid or GAMP4 validation on those. So yeah, we are a commercial off-the-shelf category 4 product, which then just shows that you can utilize us with a risk-based approach, utilize our documentation to perform that GAMP5 level validation. That's a really good question. Okay, cool. So there's one more. I'm gonna let you answer this one too, Rob. I actually have 2 more here now. How does ProCal handle electronic signatures? You want to take that one?
Sure. So there is a 21 CFR Part 11 system option in ProCal. And there's basically 3 checkboxes here. So one of them is to require that you re-enter your password on every save. The next one would be to provide a modification reason so that every time you make a save, you get to choose from a predefined drop-down list. And the third one for the electronic signatures is to prevent modification of finalized records. So in ProCal, for work that's performed like a calibration, you can go to the level of having an approval policy with multiple signatures. And once that's fulfilled and saved, you cannot modify that calibration or delete it, regardless of your settings. You could be the system administrator. With that 21 CFR Part 11 checked, you cannot delete that. So that's how we handle that there. And of course, also with that goes the audit trail, which covers all that too.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. That's why I brought you in here to be able to answer these questions for me. So I feel like I could have handled that one, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you could have.
Awesome. All right. And it looks like we have one more right now. So we'll go ahead and answer this one. And again, if you guys have any additional questions, please feel free to just use that Q&A box to ask them. But this next one right here, this is, I'll try taking my first crack at this and let you come in afterwards if I mess anything up, Rob. But this question is, do you recommend we validate if we are an R&D facility? Our quality team is on the fence. That's a great question. It's hard for us to make a recommendation on this. I can only tell you what we've seen other customers to do. We don't want to make decisions. It ultimately is your quality team's decision on whether or not you do this. And I don't have enough information specifically about your actual practices, if you're making product or any of those specific things. But I can tell you, customers that we work with, when it is just an R&D facility, they're not, manufacturing product that's going out to customers. They're just doing research in those types of things. We typically don't see those customers have to go and perform a full validation or validate at all. Sometimes, obviously, this is a good example of the pilot to manufacturing. When you scale up, then you'd be required to perform the validation. I can think of several customers that did not validate at first, used the software for a few years, and then went and did a GAMP5 level validation as they kind of were ramping up their operations and expanding. But it's, again, really going to be up to you guys there. But I would say we do see a lot of our customers in that R&D space that don't necessarily have to go and perform the full validation, at least not right away. And I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Rob.
Well, I think that if you're getting audited by somebody, then you might want to consider having some form of validation for your product there that you're relying on. You'll certainly help with the audits as you go through them, that you can say, well, look, we took the software validation that the vendor performed, we leveraged it, we performed our own, and the system's doing exactly what we needed to do based on our SOPs and work instructions. That will help things, no doubt.
Great. Perfect. Yeah, there was another anonymous question from someone, but they let me know they had to jump off and asked me just to follow up with them afterwards. And that was client specific, so I don't want to reveal their name. But yeah, okay. And it looks like we have no other questions. So with that, I'm going to assume we've provided you guys with all the information that you were looking for today. Again, if you have any additional questions, I'll follow up with those of you who did ask those cues there. And if there's anything else, just please don't hesitate to reach out. Our phone numbers, our contact information, you can go to our website or again, just respond to the meeting invitation. That being said, once we get this finished up, rendered and everything, we will be posting the recording of this webinar online on YouTube. We'll be emailing out the link to everyone who attended and all the registrants as well. So you guys will be able to, pause, share this with anyone who might be interested or anything like that too. But again, if there's nothing else, I'm really thankful for everyone who took the time out of their busy schedules to join our conversation today. And yeah, hope you have a great rest of your day. And thanks again, Rob. I really appreciate your help.
No problem. I'd like to just real quickly, if you see anything that you think would help us improve our webinars, please let us know that too. This is my first one, and maybe it won't be my last. I don't know. But anything we can do to help, I'd be more than happy to listen to those comments.
The quality guy always thinking about continuous improvement. I love it. All right, great. But yeah, well, thanks, Rob. I really appreciate that. And again, really, really thankful. We couldn't do this without you guys. Very thankful for you attending today's webinar. Thank you to those of you who participated, and we hope to see you guys on the next one. Have a great day.
Take care, all.